Okay, well, to start us off for today, one thing we usually have in Houston Actions is we have these things, we call them a check-in question. Through our check-in questions, what we're able to do is just get to know each other to make sure that people can introduce themselves in the space. And we were hoping that maybe you can, through the check-in question, if you want to either speak, or you can use the chat portion to talk to each other. If you could share your name, your pronouns if you choose to, and then our question is name a time when food helped you connect with others. So if you can think about that, feel free to answer that through the chat portion, or if you just want to unmute yourself and respond, we're open to that too. Thank you, John, for connecting, and our facilitators are on too. If you want to respond and just let the conversation go. Our intentions always with the check-in question is to let people talk to each other and to make those connections, as we have a variety of different organizations and different people from different backgrounds joining in through our trainings. We want to give you an opportunity to network and build relationships with other people, because in my mind, that's what organizing is building relationships and helping people move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I can go.
Okay.
My name is Marissa Gorena. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And a time when food helped me connect with others is while at the Houston Food Bank and talking with everyone about the census.
Thank you, Marissa. You're awesome. Thank you, Danielle, Lisa, Leslie, sorry, Irma. I'm very sorry, Leslie, for doing that. But thank you all for answering the chat portion. I really do appreciate it. And well, let's get started with our training for today. Pizza for volunteers and phone bankers. Yes, Francisco, thank you. So before we get started, I present our amazing panelist. I'm sorry, who's going to share us with parts of the best practices. I wanted to go through our working principles. And I think really a big portion of our working principles from Houston in Action is that we stay grounded in our working principles on how we work and move forward. And our intention has always been to make sure that we prioritize the group as a whole over anyone's own interests, which is one of the big working principles that I want to highlight today, which is group's goals over own interests, which is prioritizing the goals of the initiative over own interests when we work together. And this has really helped us stay grounded as we are coordinating together to move forward in our support within our community, developing leadership and developing new leaders. So as we move forward for today's training, this is one of the principles that I'm going to keep in mind to make sure that we're able to highlight all of your work that is happening in the space, and to, again, thank you for everything that you do. Including our, for the agenda for today, first, Houston in Action is going to talk a little bit about our strategy and how we're moving forward with supporting people through census events. Then we're going to have Daniel Mesa, who will introduce himself in a bit, from Baker Ripley, talk about best practices when volunteering. And then Marissa with the Houston Food Bank will help us cover what census and food distribution looks like. And then we'll have a closing and a Q&A portion for y'all to ask any questions and see how you can connect and continue doing the amazing work that you do. The first thing I do want to cover is that our strategy in supporting the communities and census events. Our work is guided by data, and we're a data-driven organization. Through January advisors, we've been able to pull out the data of seeing what is the shift in census response. And I want to give a shout out to all of you who helped us do a lot of our work in the beginning of April when census first came out. Our census numbers have been pretty low, but they would have been a lot lower if all our efforts weren't making it happen right now. In the first week of April, we collectively made a huge push in Harris County to bring as much as awareness as possible to the census, for people to respond to the census. And we actually changed we had an increase of people responding to the census. It was somewhere around 10%, where we were in the low 30s, and we went up to over the low 40s to make sure that, to get people to respond to the census. And based on that work, what we've been doing with our work with January Advisor is consistently pulling data to see what the shift in the response rates has been every week. And the really cool place to check out what this information looks like would be at the January Advisors map. This is a map that January Advisors uses in order to pull in the data to see what the response rates look like. I'm sharing the link on the chat portions if y'all want to take a look at it. And it's a simple process. Just by coming in here, you can see what the self-response rates, if you want to stick to like the lowest between 60 and 70. We usually go by the kinder neighborhood. And what it does, it divides everything up. The black lines, as you can see, is within the county. And you could actually go through neighborhood and see what are the neighborhoods and what their self-response rates look like. This one gives us a chart right here on what the response rates looks like from lowest to highest. So being able to click on them and then understanding that the neighborhood is at like a 36% response rate, 36.5. And this bottom charts at the bottom will help you navigate what the overall total populations for different neighborhoods could look like. So this is really an amazing tool. I suggest y'all to play with it as you're building strategies and how we're helping people fill out the census and how this fits into your overall work. You can even try to separate everything by neighborhoods or every neighborhood by age, ethnicity. There's a different way so you can research this by using this, looking up for civic clubs, apartment complexes. This will be able to populate the areas that you're looking for with these specific, so as you can see, the orange ones are civic clubs, the green ones are apartment complexes. So whatever is mapped out within those areas, you'll be able to find it through here. So it's a really cool tool. It's something that we use to develop our strategy and planning. So I strongly encourage folks to use this as much as possible. Through this process, what we were able to do is that we picked the most undercounted communities, and we got 10 undercounted communities that we have not only are part of the counters that are less likely to count, but are also where we have relationships with different organizations and nonprofits and members to support our efforts to make sure that more people are answering the census. So out of that, we developed a plan in order for us to coordinate with different organizations. And if you want to see what that plan looks like, you would just go to our communities respond, which is Houston in Action /communities that respond, which I'm also adding it to the chat portion. Here you'll be able to, it gives you a description of how we're moving into these specific areas. From Northwest, Pasadena and Edgebrook, which are, we have that call actually today for folks who want to join who are in Pasadena and Edgebrook, Denver Harbor to Southwest, and all the way up to Greens Point and Eastside. Now, if you go through this process, it'll tell you what are the first steps. And for our call that we have today with Pasadena and Edgebrook, the first thing to do is join our efforts, which is just filling out this Google form that allows us to see where you're working and what specific areas you're focusing on and what relationships you have. The second portion would be to RSVP for a call. We have a call today at 2. This is for folks who want to join the coordination efforts and plan and prepare for it. All you have to do is sign up, and then you will get an email with an invite to the coordination call. And that's when we break down who's reaching out to whom, how we're gonna follow up with the community members, and then develop a plan. If yes, the call is today at 3:30 to 4:30 for those who want to join. If folks want to participate by flyering in their communities, there's ways where you can request for materials, there's ways where we can support any effort you might have. So going through our website is one of the best first steps to ensure that you can join our efforts in making sure that we reduce the unaccounted population by as much as we can. For requesting materials, we have this small form, HIA, we get our materials through something that was created through the county, through their Lopez Negretes Consulting, who made the Yes to Census, which is also included in these PowerPoints. If you need any materials, feel free to use this form to ask, but know that we are prioritizing. Oops, I shared the wrong link. This is the form. I'm gonna put this form in there right now. But know that we are prioritizing the neighborhoods and our partners who are organizing in those neighborhoods. Once you fill this out, you can ask for like the different amount of flyers you need, the different amount of yard signs that you might be able to use in your neighborhood, and then through there will make sure that you get the resources you need to reach out. The reason for this also is that that some folks might actually just need a lot of yard signs to put them into different neighborhoods to make sure that when people drive by, they can see them. The reason for a coordination is so we can have like 1 week, like a launch week where we all come together. If y'all drive by Southwest, I know I did a few days ago, and there was yellow yard signs from Yes to Census all over Belford, and that was thanks to the effort of HIA and our partners that we're working with. The same thing in Eastside, and as we're moving into every neighborhood, we want to be able to pop it up and to make sure that people can see them as much as possible. Another way to make sure that our efforts get counted is if you go to our Houston in Action calendar, and this is a really cool place where we can track your events and then make sure that folks are getting credit for all the effort and work that you're doing. Here we go. So this is at our website. All you have to do is click events. So if you ever need to know like what's happening around census or how I can support or maybe what events can I join, this is where you will be able to get contact information for any events that are happening around through our membership from Houston in Action. As you can see, it's pretty packed right now, which I'm really, really happy about. But if you also have an event that's coming up, you can always submit an event. And after clicking submit an event, a form will pop out that will take the information necessary for this event to happen. So it's a really simple process to submit your events as you're thinking about how you're supporting in the census and how you're getting people to participate. This is one of the basic steps for us to make sure that we collect all the information that's happening, that everyone's work is properly represented, and people can join us. And the last thing I wanted to bring up today was our Arts and Healing panel, Arts and Healing panel and practices. Next June 10th, which is a Wednesday, which is a week from tomorrow, we will have, thanks to our facilitators from Art to Action, some panelists who have dealt in the past with trauma, and people who have, like therapists, well, not therapists, sorry. We have people who are specialists and social workers and artists who have worked with people from the VA and people who have dealt with trauma, and they will be having a panel discussion facilitated by Ana Andrea, who is our culture organizer, who we've been working with for a few months now. I invite all of you to join. You can find the information for that event on our website. I'll also be adding the link in the chat portion. So there's a lot of things going on. We want to make sure that we get as much as people to join as possible. Please feel free to share far and wide. If you want to get an invite, you will need to register to the event first, and then we'll be able to grant you access to it. But that being said, I want to actually take the moment right now and pass it on to Daniel from Baker Ripley, as he will be leading the next portion of our presentation.
Gracias, Oscar. Thank you for all these updates and wonderful resources that people in the community can use. So my name is Daniel Mesa with Baker Ripley. I just want to go ahead and let y'all know I'm here at a food fair currently. So I don't know if you can see way down there, but we're at the Pasadena Convention Center, and then the line of cars starts like over there, and it kind of flows all the way out. And so over there we have the Houston Food Bank truck, and we have our volunteers packing the food. So we have a food fair at least once at each community center, once or twice each month. And so this month we have 10 going on. And so I'll just discuss a little bit about best practices, how we are recruiting volunteers, and things of that nature. So we're getting a lot of volunteers from the community. We have volunteers from our own employees. We have 6 community centers. For those of y'all not familiar with Baker Ripley, we're a nonprofit, probably the first or second largest nonprofit in Texas. So we have 6 community centers, several schools, Head Starts, Workforce Solutions, different other, places for people to get different varieties of assistance. So to be a volunteer, the first step is to sign up at our website, which we'll see forthcoming. But when you come as a volunteer, the first thing that will happen is that you'll get pre-screened by a nurse or by someone from a medical facility. They'll check your temperature, ask you a series of questions, and then they'll put this cool bracelet on you so that we know that you've been pre-screened. Our distributions are always outside, right? So you don't have to worry about being in a confined space. We disinfect all the surfaces. We provide face masks and gloves. We also enforce social distancing as much as possible. The food that we're pulling out of the trucks, we're putting in bags, and then we're putting the bags on tables. And as people cycle in through the cars, like you saw the line of cars, we put the bags in their trunks. So usually it ranges from 2 bags per family, 3 or 4. It just depends how much merchandise we get. So we are able to serve about 400, 500 cars. Some of the cars have 2, 3 families. So it really averages out to about maybe up to 700 families that we're able to serve on the daily whenever we do our food fairs. And then for the volunteers, right, of course, we provide, light bites. Today we had some delicious breakfast tacos. I ate 2 of them. And then usually we have lunch, just a variety of different lunch that we have. I know Francisco mentioned pizza earlier. So just pizza, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, whatever, we're able to provide. We always, of course, have ice cold Gatorades and water for our volunteers. And, our volunteer list is among the thousands, but especially right now with the pandemic, it's been difficult to try to get volunteers out. So I definitely encourage everybody, if you have time, are willing and able, it's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of new people. And then we usually get about 25 volunteers, 15 to 25, and then you add on our employees, which is another 15 to 25. So we're barely making it in terms of what we need, because we do need a lot of people to unload the food and then package it and then distribute it. So we're looking for a lot more volunteers. If you're willing to come to one of our food fairs, like I mentioned earlier, there's 6 in the Houston area. So I'm sure there's one close to you, so you can volunteer at least twice a month. It's a big help. It's very rewarding. And, you get a nice sweat going. So I'll proceed to the next slide, please. So like I mentioned, we have 10 this month. Today I'm at Pasadena. And then Thursday we have one in the hobby area in Southeast at our Harbach Center. And then next week we have another 3, week after that, another 3. So, there's never nothing to do. There's always, something to do. Besides the food fairs, maybe if you're more comfortable volunteering from the comfort of your home, you can do senior welfare check-ins or wellness calls, to call to our senior programs. We have over 1,000 seniors in our different programs, and we're definitely trying to, check up on them since they're not able to come to the centers quite yet, where they used to play bingo and they used to just really socialize and have a lot of fun. They're not able to do that, so I'm sure they're feeling maybe lonely or a little kind of out of the loop. Definitely, I'm sure they're affected. So we're doing wellness calls to our seniors to check in on them. We also have tax centers. We just opened those up where the public can come and get free tax services. We know that tax day is coming up. Since it was extended, it's coming up in July. So we're also looking for volunteers to help people with their taxes. And lastly, we're also doing meal delivery to seniors. So we know that seniors over, I believe, 60 or 65, I'm sure Marissa has more information, they qualify for the senior box. And so Baker Ripley, instead of the seniors having to go to the locations where they offer the senior box, Baker Ripley actually goes and delivers those meals to seniors. And of course, we provide you with all the necessary equipment. It's very safe, and as you can imagine, it's very rewarding, and it's very helpful to the seniors that need that. So you see here on our website, volunteer.bakerripley.org, that you can sign up, you can choose which ones you want to volunteer for. We keep track of your hours. We have volunteer appreciation events. In the past, we asked that you attend an orientation, but for now, we're waiving that orientation. We also conduct a background check for volunteers, but if you're ready to volunteer, we let you volunteer while that background check is processing. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's very rewarding. You get to meet new people. You get to socialize in a controlled environment because we're monitoring social distancing. Everybody's wearing their masks and their gloves. So you get to socialize, meet new people. Who knows, maybe meet your next romantic partner. Who's the person behind the mask. You can play that game. So it's a lot of fun. Maybe in a little bit when I get the chance, I'll go over and kind of demonstrate what the setup is like if y'all are interested in that. But for now, that's my part. If you have any questions, definitely I'll put my email so you can send me an email and find out more information. But for now, definitely please visit the website just to check it out and see what volunteer opportunities we have. Bring a group, you know, if you want to promote your organization, bring some flyers and then bring a group and we'll pass out the flyers, put them in the bags. Right now we have this local church that's volunteering with us. Thankfully, they brought about 10 or more people. That's a huge help. But yeah, so there's my email as you can see. So definitely feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Danielle, for presenting. So as you know, I think everyone here might be familiar with Baker Ripley, but if you're not, they're a great organization that's still recruiting a lot of volunteers. So if you want to join in and participate, Danielle is also an organizer with Houston in Action. So if you're hosting events and need to connect with Danielle about how you can coordinate and support other people with the census, even outside of food distribution, make sure to reach out to Danielle. If you have an event going on and you think it'd be great to have someone to go by and present about census, Danielle has been doing presentations as well, even Zoom calls a lot. So he's a really, really busy person, which is why I really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Danielle, for participating, even though you're out there in the field doing the food distribution. So thank you so much for joining us. As we move from Danielle, I want to give it now to our next partner, Marissa, who's another amazing person who's supporting the food bank. And you can take it away from here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Gorena, and I'm the census coordinator with the Houston Food Bank. And today I'm going to go over what our our super site distributions are like at NRG and how everyone can get involved. So here are some pictures of what our lines look like. We are out every Saturday at the NRG Stadium, and we have two types. This is the way the food distribution process works, is we have our drive-up line and our walk-up line. Our drive-ups and our distribution times for the month of June will start from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and our walk-ups the same schedule. Now, this work is, I think when we all started, it was, why is the food bank getting involved with census and even advocacy? And at the core of our work, the reason why a fair and accurate count matters is that the census is a tool that we also use. It guides our work, and we understand where food gaps and food gap services lie, where we can place nutritional benefit programs, and all of that comes from the census. And that's the message that we use when we talk to our clients at NRG. Some of the numbers from our food distribution sites at NRG, on average, we serve about 5,000 families. So it's a massive site, and that number does unfortunately keep increasing every weekend. We do try to move the line as efficiently as possible. We have about 4 large tents, as you can see in the background there. Those are volunteer tents, but the tents are very similar to that. And they're over on, if anybody's familiar with the NRG, on the yellow lot, which is basically the massive lot off Main Street. And the shifts that we have for census canvassing start hours before the distribution line starts. So in the month of May, for example, several of our distributions started from either 2 to 7 or from 4 to 7. Well, we would be out there canvassing starting at 9. So we would start canvassing at 9 till about 12:30, because they would try to, HPD does our traffic control, so they would try to push the line as much as they can, so that way the drive-up lines wouldn't extend beyond into the freeway. And that is just a little bit of what our food distribution process is like. So in the next slide, I'll go over some of what our volunteers do and some of our best practices and safety measures. So here on best practices, our volunteers, my small team of volunteers, what I have them do is stay in uniform. And this really helps because it's a massive site. So, and all of these best practices can be taken anywhere. So with your volunteers, it's best to stay in uniform. We use our bright yellow Yes to Census shirts. We also use clipboards with the pledge cards. So those pledge cards are used for our second track, which is our follow-up phone bank. On all those clipboards, again, everybody's in uniform, so we all look the same, canvassing in the parking lot. The clipboards on the back of them have a QR code, and I think I have one here. Let me show you. So these are what our clipboards look like. They have a QR code and an English and Spanish the directions on the multiple ways you can complete the census. So like I said, our canvases are out there with these clipboards. And on the front are the pledge cards. We only take name and number. We're not asking for address. We're not asking for zip code because again, we're using this as a follow-up for a phone bank only when they say no. The materials that we use is I put a wagon because I'm usually the one rolling this little red wagon out there with our posters, with anything the volunteers need, with water, with additional QR codes, additional Yes to Census materials in multiple languages, and then bags. Our bags we only use U.S. Census Bureau bags to give when they complete in line. And this is something I've used as a tracker method aside from the QR code. The QR code doesn't work with everyone. Usually it's iPhones that work, but we found out over several distributions that Androids can work if they're not an LG phone. It's all these little details that go involved into some best practices. We use clickers and tally marks. In the next slide, I'll show you what these clickers and tally marks are used for. And every volunteer, especially if they're new, gets paired up with someone who speaks Spanish fluently, as a majority of our clients tend to, they are most comfortable in the language of Spanish. And our safety measures, we have temperature checks as well. In the volunteer tent in the previous slide, it's mandatory. So the only reason we can't start sooner than 9 a.m. is because that's when our direct supervisors arrive and we have temperature checks. No one above temperature 99 can volunteer. We usually ask them maybe to cool off, maybe it's the heat, anything like that. We do provide gloves, and the gloves are especially important for the walk-up tent because it's just kind of a little bit easier just in case someone comes too close, or might touch something on our little table or anything like that. Hand sanitizer as well. We take hand sanitizer breaks. So in between the morning shift and the afternoon shift, all the volunteers are required to either change their gloves and put hand sanitizer or hand sanitizer and then their gloves. We also take shade breaks because the parking lot it does get very hot, but I encourage all volunteers to wear shorts. Of course, they have that light t-shirt, and we take shade breaks for about 10 to 15 minutes, especially on very, very hot days. Social distancing is extremely enforced. And the benefit of being outside is that we're not in an enclosed area with AC circulating, but social distancing is definitely maintained, especially when talking to other people in their cars. If we're on the passenger side or the driver's side, the parking lot helps enforce that because 6 feet away is a parking spot. Masks, we encourage all volunteers to bring one. If not, we will provide one for you regardless. And we have a tent for shade for our walk-up line. This is when the canvassers shift from the drive-up line to the walk-up line. And in the next slide, I'll explain a little bit of our data collection and what the volunteers do. So ever since April 18th, you can follow on date April 18th all the way to most recently May 30th. We have had a total of 84 people to date complete their census with us. And this means that they've completed it either in line from their cars, we walk them through every step of the way, or in our walk-up line when they're walking up and grabbing a box of food and a produce topper. From there, we have, as you can see, a little bit lower interaction, but because, the box of food is pretty heavy, and by the time we get to interact with them, you're carrying a box of heavy food. So it's a little bit harder, but still 84 people it takes a team of volunteers to do this. So again, we would really appreciate some help out there at our distributions. But some of these numbers show QR codes, pledge card follow-ups, how many people we're able to follow up with about the census who might have, when we interacted, they said no, or no, I'll have, my kids are gonna help me fill it out. That's actually something we hear a lot, which mean the census contact for drive up and walk up, when they say no, that's actually typically the reason. But we still encourage it. We say, okay, great, just talk to your kids about it. Just remind them to help you out, and then they're on their way. And of course, as Oscar mentioned, data-driven work is important. So in the next slide, here is a graph I created of the yellow line represents the number of volunteers we've had that day. The max number of volunteers we've had is 9, and that was on May 2nd. So as you can see, with more volunteers helping out, we have higher rates of completion. And this is just completion. So this is just in line. For example, if you look at May 2nd, we had 32 completed for a drive up and a total of 34 with 2 walk up. And so the reason that I wanted to present this graph is because my call to everyone in the next slide is for our volunteer recruitment is, as you can see in this graph, it's very, very important. So on average, like I said, I work with a small team of volunteers and we canvass this massive line. So I'll be having a Google form that'll be coming soon to make it easier for everyone to sign up for which shift they would like, what they're more comfortable with, and also go through a HIPAA training. Now, since we are with the Houston Food Bank and our clients, anybody who comes and picks up a box of food is our client. And because of that, with the follow-up information that I mentioned earlier, with the name and number, HIPAA training is very important. But it is very simple and I can walk anyone through it. It's about a 7 questions and just a privacy acknowledgement form, signing that you will not do anything outside of HIPAA. We also provide snacks and lunch. Our lunch typically arrives around 12:30. Sometimes it'll be sandwiches or other organizations will donate some food. Before we had personal like thin crust Papa John's before, pizza. We definitely make sure to feed our volunteers and make sure there's always ice cold water. And the reason I put messaging in there is because with the volunteer process, messaging is key. Why does it first of all matter to have an accurate and fair count? And also, why is the food bank doing this? And it is very important in our messaging for our volunteers. And again, with volunteer recruitment, we do understand the concerns. Of course, with in-person operations, anybody would during these times. And our volunteers do assume that risk for in-person operations, but we do our best to take into account those safety measures because our community still needs food. Every volunteer there knows that, and participating in this way is a way to create direct impact. And yeah, of course, if you're only able to do this. And this slide here is a calendar of our distributions. So this Saturday is your chance to come out and help with the census. So we have 2 shifts, and the shifts remain the same for the whole month of June. Our distribution time, I'm sorry, I didn't put distribution time, but it starts from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's when the cars start rolling. That's when they start letting them put the National Guard starts putting the boxes of food into their trunk for our drive up, of course. And then our first shift is 9 to 11, and we try to canvass as many cars as we can. And then our second shift is, thank you, Daniel. And then our second shift is from 12 to 3, which is our walk-up line. That walk-up line, again, as I mentioned, people walk up and get food. Of course, they're not in their car. And the shift from there is, like I said, from 12 to 3 p.m. So right before then, or right at 12, our volunteers try to get lunch, especially our first shift volunteers. And there's also snacks too, like trail mix and baked Cheetos and things like that. So I would, if anybody's interested in helping out, you can definitely connect with me after. I provide my email at the end. And the next slide is, I'll just briefly mention about requesting a food distribution. So this looks like our little mobile there that you see there. And also, like Daniel mentioned earlier, our food mobiles go out to where our partner sites are. So as Baker Ripley is a partner site right now, if you're interested about that, you can definitely email me about that too. Again, just another way everyone can get involved because our community still needs food and we can definitely interact with them about the census. And that sums it up for me. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask me. I'm learning as I go, so I'd love to answer any questions.
Hi, hello, I have a question.
Yes.
My name is Pinky. I work with OCA Greater Houston. And we will be having a food drive this Saturday at Bush Elementary. I have been trying to get in contact with my Houston Food Bank point of contact. I think her name is Melanie. But hopefully I'll talk to her soon. I guess my question is, with the truck, the food bank truck, how much space do you need to set it up? Like what's kind of like the space that it would need?
So for our truck, our trucks are 53 feet long. So that should give like an estimate as to how much space that the truck would need to back in and out safely and to rotate. As far as contacting Melanie Pang is my supervisor. So again, if you send me an email, I can definitely try to get things worked out, especially as your distribution is on Saturday.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And also, in your experience, how many volunteers do you think you would need to start dividing and packing up the food in the morning?
So our food distribution is taken care of by HISD volunteers and also the National Guard. So in the morning for our drive-ups, our census volunteers do not handle the food. We simply canvass the line from those hours that I mentioned, from 9 a.m. until, for example, this Saturday, 11 a.m. when those cars start rolling. Because when those cars start going and HPD keeps moving them along, it gets dangerous for anybody to be around and, try to catch up, with those cars.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Pinky, for the question. I'm seeing if y'all have any other questions, feel free to use the chat portion to ask. And my question also, like for Marissa and for Danny, is if y'all can give input of like, what does it look like to help people fill out the application? I think a lot of people are familiar with like what volunteering possibilities might look like. Some folks might have seen, at least understand the concept of like putting foods into boxes and putting them in vehicles. But I often see that folks even have like an internal challenge of, so if they come here for food, how does me helping them with the census, how does that apply? Would y'all be able to give input on what is the like a deeper best practice that y'all do to ensure that people fill it out?
Yes, I'll be brief. So again, what I was mentioning throughout the presentation was that messaging and explaining why that even the box of food that they're picking up today was made in part by filling out the census, was made in part by the census. So that has been pretty much our key, that people have been able to understand and say, okay, well, this is not only, of course it's important, but it's really, really important, really tying that message in. And that tends to get people to fill it out if they already didn't want to do it on their own. So that really helps.
And you mentioned the QR code, so people can just scan the QR code to their phones and then they can open it up?
Yes. So it's the QR code that I have is connected to a Bitly tracker. So that QR code immediately, there is no landing page, anything before. It's within all the technical guidelines of the Bureau. The QR code takes them directly to my2020census.gov. And from there, they're able to pull it up and then respond to the questionnaire. And like I said, even when people do have questions, we're there to walk them every step of the way. And let's say some of my volunteers don't know every single question. Of course, I train them on the disclaimer that we're not with the Bureau, but we will help you out every step of the way. And usually they call me over just because sometimes there's very technical questions that the census will ask. We do try to promote that it takes, honestly, on average 15 minutes, so a little bit over 10. But still, you're already in line waiting about 3 to 4 hours. Let's do it together. Let's fill it out. It takes about 15 minutes, and I'm here to do it with you. So I stand by there and I wait. And if it takes, if it takes a minute, like for example, one guy that I was helping out, he said he was younger and he said, oh, well, I'm asking my siblings what year my dad was born, and so when those questions arise, I kind of put a pause. I say, okay, I'll come back to you and at least try to canvass at least 2 or 3 cars ahead of me and then go back. And again, wait there and say, oh, here, I'll give you this bag, thank you for completing the census. And they show all of us the thank you confirmation page with the confirmation number. So yeah.
Thank you. And I also see there was a question brought up about privacy concerns or fear. I don't know, Danny, if you want to give input on that, like how do you address it when people say they might be afraid to talk?
Sure. So I haven't had the good fortune of helping someone fill out their census at a food fair yet, but definitely with Marissa's recommendations and once I get some experience at the food fair that they have on Saturday, we'll be ready to start doing that at our food fairs because our lines are pretty long and they start forming lines, from 5, 6, 7 a.m. So in terms of concerns that people have filling out the census, I've been able to fill it out for other people remotely. When I work remotely or when I'm working from the center and we have small events that people come to, I've helped them fill out their census. So really the main concern are, of course, privacy concerns. They really want to understand why it's important. And once, you know, the slide that you showed previously that Marissa had in terms of SNAP and CHIP, TANF, WIC, school lunch program. So whenever you help them understand that, like Marissa just said, you know, they would not be able to provide food if it wasn't for people to fill out the census. That's pretty impactful to helping people connect the dots. Sorry about all the background noise. Helping people connect the dots is, I think, the number one thing. And then, of course, easing their concerns about privacy, assuring them, even explaining the two laws that are in place to protect their information. I think that really goes a long way to, you know, they see someone from the community, you know, with a census shirt or a volunteer shirt. And so they understand that you're from the community. They understand that you want to help the community. So I think that really making them feel comfortable goes a long way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danielle. And as y'all can see, Danielle is actually at the food distribution event that they're hosting at Baker Ripley. So thank you for your openness and willingness to respond. We have another question here for the both of you, and maybe you can take it on, Marissa, which is like, how do you ensure individuals worried about completing the census due to their citizenship status? So if someone's a non-citizen, has those questions come up when people are trying to fill it out, and then how do you encourage people to fill it out?
Yes, I was trying to respond in the chat box, but that question has definitely came up, and it is our job as volunteers, again, first and foremost, the disclaimer. I'm sorry if you can hear that, but the disclaimer is that, again, we are not with the Bureau, but we are here to help, and it is up to them ultimately, of course, you know, to decide for themselves if they want to. But the key thing we use is some of Naleo's materials to to promote safety and to promote how the information is protected, and that it does not ask those questions, and it does not ask those questions. And then we do our best. I train my volunteers on this messaging to circle back and say, you know, of course it is your choice, but to again emphasize how important it is. And we try, even if sometimes there's young kids in their cars, what we try is, again, this is very important for schools. This is very, you know, we try to tie that really, really back to why would it be important to them? How do we tell them it's important and also safe? So.
Yeah, thank you, Marissa. And that is like an important point as we review the census application. I completely agree when it comes to like supporting people, remembering that our role is there to give them the best information possible, but then it comes up to that person to make the decision to fill it out and then to decide what's best for their family. And I see Danny's also adding a lot in the chat, so if y'all want to read that. And another question we have here is like, what should orgs consider if they're thinking about supporting people filling out their census and food distribution? So as y'all know, it's different for us. Danny said that he helped people individually. It's different when we're sending people just to take a pledge or to agree to fill it out, from actually helping them filling out those questions. Like, what are the best, maybe sharing some more practices that you've done that can help people think outside, or if they're uncomfortable with it because they haven't tried it before, how do we encourage people to support them through these efforts?
And just for clarity, did you mean as an organization or to help volunteers?
Well, it's both. So like, what does the food bank do to calm people when they want to fill it out? Like, what are your practices to help them fill it out once they're there? And then as an individual and your volunteers, like, what do y'all personally do? Like, what have you noticed that is different from helping someone over the phone than to being out there in the field, especially during COVID? I mean, I know you said a lot about it already.
Yes, and I think being in the field is, of course, different from phone bank. It's just different. But that one-on-one interaction, our biggest thing is they're already waiting in line about 3 or 4 hours. They're already there, and I tell my volunteers to kind of, you said that the level of comfort is to say that we're here. We're gonna do it with you. You know, kind of assuring them it takes 15 minutes. It takes about 10-15 minutes. We're here to answer any questions. and we really do our best to answer every single question that someone might have, whether it's privacy concerns, whether it's the citizenship question, whether it's how do I answer the race and ethnicity question. That again, I've used a lot of the Naleo materials to not only learn the words in Spanish, because sometimes not every word is exactly what you I guess think it is, but some of those things are very helpful. And again, it's our job to get that messaging across, why it matters, why it's important, how safe it is, and to address every single question they have as best as we can, of course.
I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything, Danny.
No, I think Marissa really just summed it up. Definitely trying to relate it to them. Even like providing a personal example, you know, personally, this is why I filled out the census, providing a personal example. I have a family that's undocumented, and I've helped them fill out the census, you know, so I relate that to the people that I'm talking to that, you know, I wouldn't advise you to do this if I would not do the same for my family, right? So definitely relating, making people feel comfortable, answering, like Marissa mentioned, every question you can. And if not, you know, getting that answer for them. I've had some tough questions and I've had to do some digging. Naleo is a great resource. They have a lot of really great materials and tools, online tools and flyers. So yeah.
Thank you, Danielle. And to that note, I will add a big shout out to Naleo for all the effort and work that y'all have done throughout the year to get as many people counted as possible. And big shout out to Genesis too for all the training she's also able to do across the state. On April 28th, Houston Action hosted a training along with the Bureau where we covered like what are the best practices in supporting people fill out the application. We have like guidelines that the Bureau gave to us, and you can find those on our website and our YouTube channel too. If you want to check out the training, you'll be able to get a lot of that information. It is a really good resource, and it was based on the guidelines coming from the Bureau. So I would say definitely check it out. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to chat, write them in there, or to unmute yourself and ask within the space. I do just want to. Okay, so I think we have a question. It says League of Women Voters is hoping to start distribution and collection voter registration cards for food distribution and elsewhere. We're starting our collaboration with the Houston Food Bank, but are very open and hopeful as we can, and hopeful that we can work with all of you to get more folks registered to vote. Thank you so much. And yes, as we all know, census is a portion of our work, but when census is over, even as Houston, actually, we want to move into making sure that people can still participate civically and have a full civic life. So that's a big portion of us moving forward. So if you need any more contacts from the Bureau, or even after the food distributions from Baker Ripley, they, like they say, they have thousands of volunteers. And I noticed that Volunteer Houston and Interfaith Ministry are also on the call. Volunteer Houston website is a really good website for you to put in your volunteer events, for you to be able to track other volunteers and get involved. So by all means, collaborate, cross-pollinate, make sure that all these resources are accessible. To that note, I do want to bring up that one more time that if you need access to any materials, I will add the material link in the chat portion. But any materials that you might need, feel free to fill out this form. We are working together with the county and the city to ensure that y'all get all the materials you need to be as successful as possible. Please reach out to us as we go through each regional area. We are prioritizing those regional areas, but if we have some more materials, we want to make sure that it's accessible to partners and members who, even though you might not be working in those regional areas, still need this resources, so you can bring more awareness into your communities. Remember again that if you want to check out any census events that are happening through Houston Action, that you can go through our HoustonAction.org website and see the events that we're hosting. If you have a census related event, know that you can upload it there and it will be able to share it with the community. And the last thing I want to bring up for the call, as well as not only the community's response campaign, which we're looking into every regional area to support people, but we have an arts and healing panel and practices discussion happening on June 10th. If you want to register to that event and participate and join us, please follow the link, as you will be able to get an invite after you filled out the link with the more information. If there's any, and thank you, Genesis, for sharing a lot of the information from the notes. It's really, really helpful. Know that if you have any questions around Houston in Action, you can reach out to Anna at houstonaction.org, or myself, Oscar at houstonaction.org, and we'll be able to support and help in any way we can. And I wanted to see if there's anyone that had any questions. Oh, yes. So I see Pinky wants to know if they can get the slides for today. Definitely. Only the folks who were able to RSVP through our account will be getting an email with these slides. So if you're on the call, but you didn't sign up RSVP, please make sure to do so, as that's the space we're looking to track how many people attended our trainings. And that's a way to give the most accessibility to everything. I wanted to see, thank you, Anna. There is a question here about hearing from other organizations about their thoughts around implementing these practices in their events. So does anyone here have like any thoughts about what it looks like? Are you already doing something like this, and how do we support you, or how maybe giving input of how we could do some things differently? Any final thoughts? Yeah, thank you, Pinky. And I know that a lot of folks are excited to see like what the best practice is. Really learning from the food distributions that's coming from the Houston Food Bank has been really helpful. I'm not sure if anyone had a question. I hear a pup. Okay, well, learning from the food distributions and how they're supporting, I can honestly say that like we were shocked in a good way to see how amazing the Houston Food Bank has been able to do this work. You know, even though that this isn't necessarily like a big portion of what they do, once they give food into people in the community, they're able to do so much more just by talking to people who is familiar with the Houston Food Bank, but also taking advantage of the fact that there is a long line of cars waiting there and who aren't getting activated, and that's where those volunteers come in and being able to support them. So that has been a really, really amazing work that the Houston Food Bank has been able to provide into the community, and not just giving food, but also making sure that they get counted and that their communities get properly resourced to those efforts. So I know that that right there has been a giant leap into seeing are people who are coming to an event, which is probably a good question for you to ask yourselves. If people who come into an event, are there moments when they're not, where they're inactive, where they're not really participating in something, and how can I get them to participate? So even if you don't do food distributions, but your office is open and there's a long line of people, is there a way to interact with them while they're waiting in line? Even if you're doing a Zoom call, and figuring out different ways to get people active and participating is key to making anything happen. Well, if there isn't any last questions or thoughts, I think we might be able to wrap this up a bit early. But I'll open it up to y'all maybe for last questions or thoughts to ask Marissa or Danielle. Okay, well, I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you so much for participating today. Thank you for all your support and efforts in making this happen. A big shout out to, again, Danielle and Marissa for your support in making this happen. And I also want to make sure that, I want to thank Naleo for all the efforts that you're doing to making sure that our communities get properly counted and for training a lot of our people. So. But thank you all. We'll be catching you next time. Remember to register to our trainings, go to our website, reach out to the Houston Food Bank, Drew Baker Ripley, if you want any more information.
Hey, Oscar, this is Marie with a Y, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Trying to keep my dog down. I know that I've got a separate question to Marissa on food distributions. We've been waiting for some time for materials, and I really hate that we've lost that opportunity of, you know, the long lines to have helped connect, but we're still working through the summer, so we still have opportunities to do that. We're doing a little different where they're just picking up the produce boxes, so the lines are going back, you know, really quickly now, but we're still committed to help to support getting the information out, and also helping to, you know, the QR codes have been extremely helpful. through the process the past 12 weeks as the forms have changed because of waivers. So we have sometimes more time or less time with the clients and the neighbors that are coming through. But that's all changed. What I did want to mention to you and just reach out to me separately is there are certain sites within the YMCA that have opened up for day camp. And so if you have your targeted areas, districts, or zip codes, I can share with you where we're doing the, where we're open for members. We just opened yesterday, and then where we're open for day camp. So it's strictly families. And so we can try to do some outreach at some of those sites because we're limiting public action, public interaction right now. So we can keep things really in a safe way where possibly people could come to the Y and we can host them and help them fill out the census form or, answer any questions. So those kind of things are available. I just want to make sure that you understand that our facilities and our organization are committed to help doing this. This isn't something that we do all the time, but we've been trying to connect and figure out how it is we can help boost these numbers in these last few months.
Thank you so much, Maria. Yeah, we should definitely connect. I think if you wouldn't mind also putting your email in the chat just in case we don't have it, but we'll be able to follow up with you. And I see Anna McNaught wants to really reach out to you. So how do we follow up? Because we would love to see how we can support the YMCA, and maybe a big part of that is also our communities respond campaign, looking into the areas in which we're working in. And then we want to make sure that that maybe y'all can participate in some of the calls and see how we're coordinating and reaching out to there, and even connecting some of our organizers. I still see that Leslie from Jolt is on the call, as well as Danny, who facilitated part of the discussion today, is on the call. Maybe there's another way where we can all connect together and see how we can bring in that support to the different organizations.
Yeah, and there might have been more interaction in the north side. I know there's a little more chatter and connection because of the relationship with Leonel Castillo, Baker Ripley, and the Y, but I think overall Spring Branch, A-Leaf, where we've been able to put that mural, we haven't been able, there's the mural got put out at A-Leaf, but we just haven't done anything to help promote that. And I think the last thing is that people are very confused about the information that's being presented, and as easily as, as the campaign is trying to make things as uncomplicated as possible, I think leveraging, if the food bank can leverage the partnerships that they've been able to build with HISD, with Baker Ripley, with the Y, where these large distributions have been occurring for weeks on end, and that the folks have, have a strong trust by driving up, and we're not asking them for anything. We're not asking them to prove anything. Just let us give you and let us help you. That maybe the messaging into them through Univision or through a texting option is that just to break that down really easy, like, you filling out, completing the census allows the community to continue to help you, right? And, through the food bank or whatever, but just breaking it down so simple, and that will just really call them to drive to action, to filling that out. And then having these prompt reminders through the summer that we're still giving this out. So not changing the campaign or anything, but just maybe some messaging, recognizing those relationships over the past few weeks. So.
Okay, thank you. And we're definitely going to be reaching out to you today to see how we follow up and how we can support. I know downtown is coming up, as well as Greens Point. We did North Side a week ago, but Denver Harbor is close to North Side too, like thinking about different areas and how we can support. So if you go through our Communities Response website, you will be able to see like where are the next areas we're still focusing on to give input. And even the areas that we already covered, we have plenty of relationships and working with people there that will be able to make those connections as well. But thank you so much for bringing that up right now.
Sure.
Any last questions or thoughts in the space? And Pinky, no, we saw your email, so we'll be able to follow up and respond to you too. And I'll make sure that Marissa and Danny has it in case they need to reach out to you. Well, okay, I want to thank everyone one more time for being here. Thank you so much. If you ever need any input or have any thoughts or concerns, even if it comes into trainings and suggestions of what else we can put out there and provide for you, by all means, let us know. Our intention is to connect people and for us to work, make our coordinated efforts to ensure that more people in our undercounted communities get counted. All right, well, y'all have a wonderful day, a good rest of your day, and then I'll be seeing y'all soon.